Hello students, we have started with the share capital topic in the last lecture if you remember. Now we are going to proceed further and we'll try to understand the differences between equity and the preference shares. If you remember, we have completed the types of the share capital, the nature of the share capital. There are different types of natures of the share capital. We are having the authorized, paid up, issued, called up, and subscribe capital. And then we started with the different types of capital, share capital and the borrowed capital debentures. We will talk little later after completion of the share capital. Now we have understood the differences, the basic differences between the equity share capital and the preference share capital. So what is meant by equity share capital, which is not a preference share capital? Now what are the ingredients or the features of the preference share capital? So preference shareholders get the right, the first preference over the payment of dividend, and they get the preference over repayment of capital when the company goes for the winding up. Now we will proceed further and we will try to understand the differences between preference share capital and the equity share capital. So let's get started. So let me just put a difference between column over here. So let's first try to understand preference shares, and here I will write down equity shares. So this is my preference shares, equity shares. So what are the main differences? Yes, the first difference will be on the basis of the payment of dividend. So I would say that over here so how preference shareholders get they get the dividend? It is fixed rate of dividend. It is fixed rate of dividend. Here there is no fixed rate of dividend in the equity shares. So the rate of dividend varies. The date of dividend, I would say, may vary. So it may be different. So it may not be always fixed, because the equity shareholders as a right, they cannot get the dividend. So they get dividend on the basis of the profits which has been earned by the company, and it may vary from time to time. So here we can say dividend on the preference shares is paid in preference to equity shares. Dividend on preference shares is paid in preference to equity shares. So what we can write down? The dividend on is paid only after preference dividend has been paid. Okay, so here the dividend on the preference shares is paid in preference to the equity share holders. Means before the equity shareholders will get the dividend, the preference is always given to the preference shareholders in the payment of the dividend. And here the dividend they will it is just totally opposite to what we have written in the preference shares. They will get dividend only after payment of dividend to the preference shareholders. We can write down in case of winding up, in case of winding up, preference shareholder get preference over equity shareholders with regard to payment of capital. So always remember the preference shareholders, when the company will go for the winding up, will get the first preference. So what you will write down over here, in case of winding up, get payment of capital after so this is just opposite to what we have just understood. So always remember the main 2 points of differences between equity shares and the preference shareholders are, in case of winding up, the preference shareholders they get the preference over equity shareholders. Okay, in the case of repayment of capital, whereas okay here the equity shareholders will get okay payment only after the repayment is made to the preference shareholders. Again we will write down over here preference shares and equity shares. So the 4th point of difference, so dividend may be cumulative, and dividend over here cannot be cumulative, cumulative. Okay, so what is meant by cumulative dividend? Okay, so dividend, if it is not paid to the preferential shareholders in the financial year, can be carried forward and can be accumulated, okay, in the next year. But that is not the case with the equity shareholder. If equity shareholder doesn't get the dividend, okay, in this particular financial year, then as a right, equity shareholder cannot ask that dividend in the next coming year. So that right may be available to the cumulative preference shareholders, but may not be to the equity shareholders. The voting rights are restricted. The voting rights are restricted. But what about here? An equity shareholder can vote on all matters affecting the company. Okay, so voting rights are restricted. This is one of the biggest benefit available to the equity shareholders. Equity shareholders can vote on all matters affecting the company. They can appoint directors, auditors, they can even change the business of the company. Okay, like the many matters can be there which will affect the status of the company as such. But voting rights for the preference shareholders are restricted. There is only one exception you can say to the preference shareholder is given. If payment is not given, payment of dividend is not given for 2 years, consecutive 2 years, then preference shareholders also get right to vote. Okay, like equity shareholders. So that is one of the restriction which is given, or exception rather you can say, which is given in the Companies Act. Let's try to understand. No bonus right shares can be issued to preference shareholders. What about here? Of course, they have every right to get the bonus shares and right shares. A company may issue bonus right shares to equity shareholders. So this is one of the again biggest benefit available to the equity shareholder. We can say redeemable preference shares may be redeemed by company. But can equity shares be redeemed? No. Equity shares cannot be redeemed. So redemption is one of the important feature available with the preference shares, which is associated with the preference shares. So there cannot be, as per the Companies Act 2013, which I have covered in my last lecture session as well, there cannot be the irredeemable preference shares. Now every company will have to redeem the preference shares within a period of 20 years. The maximum limit is given for infrastructure companies. Okay, it is the limit is 30 years. So redeemable preference shares can be redeemed, but equity shares cannot be. It can only be transferred from one shareholder to the another. If the seller is there and buyer is there, they can come together, they can do the transfer. That is only possible in equity shares. So these are important points of differences. I hope you understood these points of differences very well. So you may just make a note of all these points. So there are 7 points of differences which I have given over here. So fixed rate of dividend may vary. Dividend on preference shares is paid in preference. Okay, so here I can just underline fixed rate, it may vary. In preference, after preference dividend. Again, repayment of winding of preference shareholders get preference over equity shareholders. Okay, but they do not get the preference over preference shareholders. It may be cumulative in nature, okay, but cannot be cumulative. I explained to you this particular point very well. The voting rights are restricted, but here they can vote on all matters. One of the biggest benefit available. No bonus and right shares, and in here, yes, they can enjoy the right of bonus and right shares. Whether shares can be redeemed? Yes, cannot be redeemed. Okay, so these are the important points of differences we have addressed. So here we have completed the topic of types of share capital. Equity shares, preference shares. If the question is asked for the short notes, difference between, okay, even the full length question, you should be in a proper position to explain it very well. Now let's move on and try to understand the difference between shares and stock. If you remember the definition of share, what we have studied under the Companies Act, share means a part of share capital and includes the stock. Now what is meant by stock? Let's try to understand. So very quickly we will do this particular topic. So shares versus stock. Shares versus stocks. Okay, now what is share versus stock? Share is the part of share capital. First, let me just give you an idea, brief idea, what is share, what we have done in the last session, previous session. Share is the part of the share capital which is normally into equal denominated shares. Okay, so shares are broken into equal denominations, whereas stock is the bundle, okay, of the lump sum holding of the shares. Okay, so with the help of the you can say the difference between, we'll try to understand what is stock exactly, what about stocks. So shares are always in units. Shares are issued in units, whereas stock is issued, but let me tell you, stock cannot be directly issued, it should be converted. in lump sum holding. So this is my one of the point of difference, the first point of difference. Shares may be partly paid up or fully paid up. That is always possible. As I told you, company may issue the shares, company may take the application money, and company can later on ask the shareholders to transfer the money. Okay, so that is always possible in case of the shares. So you can say shares may be partly or fully paid up. But here stock should always be fully paid up. So it is not possible, okay, that the shares can be converted into stock for partly paid up shares. Okay. So normally what happens in the stocks, try to understand, stock cannot be directly issued by the company. So there is the conversion, okay, from the shares to stock is possible when it is written, when it is duly authorized by the articles of association of the company. Then only a company may proceed further and convert shares into stock. So shares can be directly issued, but stock cannot be directly issued. But what the second point, okay, second point is important from that particular, okay, point of view. The shares can be partly or fully paid up. So when a company is issuing the shares, as I told you, it may be partly paid up, but when you are converting into the stock, the company will have to ensure that the conversion of those shares, okay, can only be possible for the fully paid up shares. So conversion is not possible for the partly paid up shares for that particular matter. So shares can be issued directly, so as I told you, it is not possible that stock can be issued directly. Stock cannot be issued directly. Cannot be issued directly. Okay, so shares can be directly issued to the proposed shareholders, but stock cannot be. It is a conversion procedure which is possible in case of the stock, which should be in accordance with the provisions of the Companies Act. It is very clear. Shares should bear distinctive numbers. Shares should bear distinctive numbers. But what about the stock? Stock should not bear a distinctive number, or stocks are never numbered, or you can say stock should not bear a distinctive number. Just opposite to that. Stock should not bear distinctive numbers. Okay, so when you issue the shares, okay, in the last session I have explained to you how the distinctive numbers are defined. So whatever the paid up shares are there, okay, your distinctive numbers cannot exceed beyond it. So every part of the share capital in the form of shares are given one unique distinctive numbers. That is not the case with the stock. So let's assume that I hold 10,000 rupees of the shares in the company. Now I would like to convert into three different parts, okay, in the form of stock. So I may convert into 5,000 rupees of the stock, 3,000 and 2,000. So likewise I can just convert it, but it is not, okay, distinctively numbered. So 4 point of differences we have studied so far. Let's move on very quickly. Shares versus stock. Shares should be in equal denominations. Stocks can be split into unequal amount. As I told you, okay, stock can be split into unequal amount, but the shares should be always be in the equal denominations. So every share in the company will have its equal value. So company, if it has issued 1 lakh equity shares, so each share in the 1 lakh equity shares will have the same value. That may not be the case with the stock. Stocks can be numbered, okay, stocks can be of the different, okay, amounts. So like 1 lakh rupees can be broken into 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 and so on. Shares cannot be transferred in fractional amount. In fractional amount. So again this point we have covered, okay, shares cannot be transferred in fractional amount. You cannot just divide and the shares from its amount, but it is always possible to, okay, have the transfer in the fractional amount. So these are the point of differences we have studied relating to the shares versus stock. So very quickly just write it down if you want. Units, lump sum holding, maybe partly or fully paid up. It should be always fully paid up. Can be issued directly, cannot be issued directly, should bear distinctive numbers, should not bear distinctive numbers. Then shares should be in equal denominations, can be into unequal amount, cannot be transferred in fractional, can be transferred in fractional amount. Now we are going to study the different topic today related to the share capital only, share certificates under section 46. So what are the important provisions of given under the Companies Act relating to the share certificate? Okay, so what is share certificate? It is a kind of prima facie evidence given by the company to the shareholder of holding the share. So when you are holding the share certificate, okay, it is a kind of evidence that okay, you are the shareholder of the company. So whenever the share certificate are issued in future, when a shareholder is going to transfer the shares to another person, so it should be along with that the share certificates are also required to be transferred. So what are the various important provisions relating to the share certificates which are given in the Companies Act under section 46? Let's try to understand. So certificate can be issued under the common seal. Okay, like what we will do, we'll just put the pointers over here. So a share certificate, I will just use the short form certificate. Issued under the common seal if any of company or signed by two directors and company secretary shall be prima facie evidence of the title or person to such shares. Okay, so what does it include? I'll first write down all the points and then I will explain to you. It specifies the shares held by any person the manner of issue of share certificate, the form of certificate should be as per the rules. Should be as per the rules. A duplicate certificate may be issued if it is lost or destroyed. Second, if it has been defaced, mutilated, or torn and is surrender to company. Where shares are held in depository form, the record prima facie evidence. Then you can say penalty part, so there can be penalty. So basically, if company makes any kind of defraud and issues a duplicate share certificate, okay, then there can be penalty. First, company shall be, so what I can do, fine to company, up to 5 times not up to, minimum 5 times to 10 times or rupees 10 crores. Every officer under section 447. Okay, so let's try to understand the provisions relating to the share certificate. So share certificates provisions are given under 46. So first point says that a share certificate issued under the common seal. So normally share certificates are issued under the common seal of the company by signing, okay, two directors of the company, they normally sign, and if there is a CS appointed by the company secretary is appointed by the company, then he also can sign on the share certificate, and it becomes then the prima facie evidence that a person, okay, to whom the share certificate is issued, okay, he is the shareholder of that company. So it's a very important document. Company has to, okay, issue to the shareholders. Company has to do the formalities from time to time. Company has to maintain the records of the share certificate numbers and everything in the register of members very carefully. So what does it specify? It specifies the shares held by such person to whom the share certificate is issued. So whenever whoever, okay, is holding the share certificate, whatever numbers of shares he is holding, so it specifies the number of shares he is holding in that particular company. The manner of issue of share certificate in the form, okay, in the form, okay, of that share certificate should be as per the rules. So there are some rules, okay, as per 2014 rules, okay, share certificate के rules रहते हैं. So as per that, it should be in proper format. Of that format only the share certificate should be issued. Now let's assume that, okay, there may be a requirement of issuance of duplicate share certificate, but not always. So law has specified those things. So duplicate share certificate can be issued if it is lost or destroyed, and if it has been defaced, mutilated or torn, and should be surrendered to the company. So try to understand, let's assume that a share certificate is torn, and that share certificate is produced before the company, and company will have to, okay, then take it into the custody. Company will have to issue the new share certificate to the shareholders. And always remember, there is a provision, it is a practice followed by the company writes down, okay, on the front side or the top of the line, okay, that the new share certificate has been issued in lieu of this old share certificate. So this is the practice followed by the companies, okay. It should be properly, the record should be properly maintained. When the new share certificate is issued, again that entry has to be made in the register of members. So where shares are held in depositories form, okay, a record of the depositories prima facie evidence. So we have, okay, two depositories in India, mainly NSDL and CDSL. So when you are holding your shares in the demat account, okay, then there is no requirement of issuance of the share certificate, because it is as good as equivalent to the share certificate, and it maintains the record that you are the shareholder of that particular company. Okay, so when the shares are issued nowadays, okay, many companies go for the issuance of securities through demat account, okay, and that is the reason. So various depository participants are also there along with the NSDL and CDSL. So dematerialized securities are basically held by the investors in their respective accounts. So like it is just like a bank account where we keep the money. So in these particular accounts we keep the shares. Okay, so the depository participant keeps a track of everything, how the transfer is taking place, transmission, with whether the charge is created, like that everything, okay, can be taken care of. And that is the reason it is for them, okay, the physical form of share certificates are not required. Penalty, very important, okay, what may be the penalty, okay, if any company goes for the contravention. So penalty is very huge, okay. If one can read the penalty, will understand. It may be okay, fine, okay, it is the word fine I have mentioned over here. Let me just correct it so that there won't be any mistake. So there can be fine levied on the company, okay, minimum 5 times to 10 times of the face value of the shares, or rupees 10 crores. So 10 crores is a very huge amount. Try to understand. So any particular company, okay, if the company with intent to defraud, there is the intention to defraud, then only this kind of fine can be levied on the company. Issues a duplicate certificate of shares, or the company shall be punished with this particular fine or 10 crores, whichever is, okay, basically higher in that case. So whichever is higher is a huge amount. If it is 10 crore rupees, this is a very huge amount. So company should not make any kind of mistakes while issuance of share certificates, and every officer should be liable under section 447, which is a section of fraud we have studied under misstatement in prospectus. I hope these points are very clear to you. Question may be expected in the short note. Just make a note of this. Okay. Now we are going to talk about issue of shares at premium or discount. Okay, issue of shares at premium or discount. Now these two concepts have been defined under section 52 and 53. So 52 talks about issue of shares at premium, 53 talks about issue of shares at discount. Now what does it mean? See, under the concepts of this financial management, basically, okay, the fair value of the share may be equal to, the fair value may be equal to or less than, okay, or more than the face value of the shares. So my face value of the shares is, let's assume that 10 rupees. So it may be equal to 10 rupees my fair value, or it may be more than that, okay, it may be less than that. So if the security is issued to the investors price lower than that, the fair value, it may so happen that existing shareholders may not like it, okay, and they can create some objections. So also issuing a share at a value more than or less than fair value may have adverse consequences, and that is the reason these provisions are very important to understand. So let's try to understand section 52 and section 53 for that matter. So what is issue of share at premium? So let's try to understand issue of shares at premium. Issue of shares at premium. So when a security of a given face value is issued at a price higher than its face value, the issue is called issue of share at premium. And differential amount as premium. Issue of share at discount. When the issue price is lower than face value, the issue is called as issue of share at discount and the differential is known as discount. Okay, so these are the two important concepts one needs to understand. So let's assume that a company is issuing security more than its face value, then it is issue of share at premium, and company is issuing less than its fair value, then it is issue of share at discount. Now why the company will issue more than that? Because the fair value of the share may be different in that particular case. Okay, so that time, that particular part, let's assume that company's face value is rupees 10 and company is issuing share at 100 rupees. So the 90, that is the difference between the face value and the issue price, that is called as premium, and that should be transferred to the securities premium account. I hope you understood this particular concept very well. So basically, you need to understand, this is defined under section 52 and this is defined under section 53. Okay, so these are the two sections. So issue of share at premium, let's try to quickly understand the provisions relating to it. Issue of share at premium provisions. A sum equivalent, or you can just say it's a sum equal to the aggregate amount of premium received shall be transferred to securities premium account. So this is the specific account which a company has to maintain, and the funds whatever received as a premium should be transferred over here. So how this particular account can be used? This account, okay, SPA, I would say this is SPA, may be applied by company. So कहाँ कहाँ इसका पैसा यूज हो सकता है? Okay, let's talk about that. To issue fully paid up bonus shares, to issue fully paid up bonus shares in writing off preliminary expenses in writing off the expenses on any commission or discount on any issue of shares or debentures to redeem preference shares or debentures to purchase its own securities under section 68, that is buyback. Okay, so these are the provisions relating to the issue of share at premium. So sum equivalent to the aggregate amount, whatever premium company will receive, it should transfer that premium to securities premium account. How this account can be applied? To issue fully paid up bonus shares. So what are the expenses which can be, okay, where the funds can be utilized? To issue fully paid up bonus shares, to write off the expenses, preliminary expenses of the company, and to write off the expenses of any commission or discount on issue of shares or debentures. तो जो भी issue of shares और debentures हो चुके हैं, उसका issue आने के बाद, पैसा आने के बाद, company can utilize the funds towards those expenses. And to redeem preference shares or debentures. So whenever the redemption will happen, company may utilize the funds of securities premium account. And also in case of buyback, buyback is a provision we are going to talk about, okay, in detail. So this is my issue of shares at premium. Now what are the provisions of issue of shares in discount? So let's talk about the provisions. So provisions, where these provisions are given, section 53, and the earlier provisions are given under section 52. So what are the provisions? A company cannot issue shares, okay, according to this section. Okay, a company cannot issue shares at discount except in case of sweat equity shares under section 54 of the act. Okay, so company cannot, has been prohibited from issuance of shares at discount. Okay, and company issues, then what will happen? Any share issued by a company at discount shall be void So these are the important provision one needs to understand. So it will be considered as void. Only sweet equity shares are allowed to issue shares at discounts. So there can be some penalty levied on the company, and the company may have to repay back the money, but these 2 points are important. I hope you have understood the provisions of issue of shares at premium and discount. So if the question is asked, you should be in a position to write down. So please make note of this. So provisions relating to issue of shares at premium and issue of shares at discount. So students, we have completed today 3 different topics: difference between equity shares and preference shares, then shares versus stock, and issue of shares at premium and discount. So in the next topic we will just continue in the sequence and we'll try to understand different provisions of the Companies Act 2013. Thank you so much for watching this video. Do watch this video, read the notes. Till then, goodbye. We'll meet again very soon.